Yo, what's up, guys? My name is Oliver Hayes alongside Harrison Simeon, and we are back for episode 16 of the Scobo SportsCast. And we don't really have a special guest because, I don't know, Patrick's a part of our organization, our club, but he's special in our hearts. So would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Patrick Dawson, International School of Stuttgart, 2023.
Surprised to not see a Dougie there, bro.
Yeah. Gotta do the John Wall intro.
But no, a lot of big news. Men's and women's still full swing. But there's a new defensive coordinator here in Boulder. We'd like to talk about that and kick it off with talking some football.
I guess I'll kick things off. I know you had a lot to say about him as well, Patrick. But Robert Livingston, the former safeties and secondary coach for the Cincinnati Bengals since I think he was that coach from he was started as that coach in 2016 and then got to Cincinnati in 2012 as a scout. And he's been under some really notable defensive coordinators. Mike Zimmer was one of the big candidates to be the defensive coordinator job, but instead his scout for 2 years we ended up hiring. So Zimmer was with Cincinnati in 12 and 13, now with the Dallas Cowboys, but Livingston also with Lou Anarumo, most notably, from 2019 to, I guess, just last Tuesday before he was hired. And Anarumo, known as one of the better defensive coordinators in all of football over the past several years. I mean, they made a run to the Super Bowl a few years back, and I kind of realized Anarumo's defense is still the last team to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs to date. So he's been a part of some really, really good teams. Coaching a secondary that's always been really solid. Last year was a bit of a down year. They lost their two best players, which I think Livingston was probably instrumental in developing in Von Bell and Jesse Bates. They left for, I think it was Carolina and Atlanta. But before that, he built them up into some of one of the best safety duos in the league. Also coached former Buff Chidobe Awuzie in that secondary. Mike Hilton, another notable name that's kind of always been that kind of guy that you could look for in CU and how he likes to use the slot corner. And I think he'll really bring a pro-style approach. I am working on a big fat article on him currently, so stay tuned on our newly named website, I guess you could say, scobosports.com.
There we go.
We don't have to say anything crazy to get you there.
No
but
more riddles.
Yeah. But for now, I'll just go off. What I have here is that I like that we have someone that was in the NFL and has learned under such a smart mind that Anarumo was, because that defense took a lot of talent that wasn't really, it was good, but it wasn't special, and it made them into a special defense through their scheme. And something that a lot of CU fans will like. Shout out to Troy and Nikki's video for letting me know of this, but the Bengals were one of the best defenses in the league against crossing routes, and that was one of our big gripes of last year's defense. They've allowed the 9th lowest completion percentage in the league since Livingston's become the secondary coach in 2016. I think it was they and between 2021 and 22 when they had that really good core in the secondary before a lot of injuries and stuff like that kind of messed with things this past year. They let up just 21.2 points a game and an 87 passer rating, which was 5th and 6th best in the league. And then, they've had plenty of really top-level stats across the board that I think, with Livingston being so unfamiliar, that, people can get excited about, even though, I didn't know who he was before the hire. But after, hearing about him and seeing the kind of the players he's brought up and developed, it's really exciting.
Yeah, I know last year at the games that I went to, I kept track of a lot of the defensive looks the Buffs use, because just trying to figure out like why things aren't working. And they loved 3-3-5. That was their favorite, like by far, their favorite front. And I guess like more as football evolves, nickel is becoming more of like a base defense than like a 3-4 or a 4-3 or something like that. So, but with him being a defensive backs coach and us having a roster that's tailored to having a lot of DBs on the field, because we have a lot of talented DBs. 3 of our top 5, you want to say 4, we talked about before.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
3 of our top 4 tacklers were DBs. So we've always got the little guys on the field, and that was literally his specialty in the pros, was he was paid to coach the little guys. So if we can take advantage of that, and we can turn, because the defensive backs struggled in different ways all season. Like we talked about the crossing routes.
Yeah.
That just was insane. I mean, versus CSU, they beat us on mesh 20,000 times in both man and zone, when zone is notoriously how you defend mesh. Guys just couldn't keep up. And so I think if he can bring a pro-style defense to compete with the more evolving pro-style offenses in college, then I think he can really help out with our pretty talented but somewhat raw secondary, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and I want to agree with that, because I don't know, I felt like a big thing last year was just like the lack of adjustments. I feel like there were just so many, like, I don't know. I feel like most obviously was the crossing routes and then maybe the running game, although the D-line wasn't that great. But just the same issues on defense over and over and over and over again. And it seemed like, I don't know, there were different – they tried different things as far as personnel. Like I feel like more specifically Cormani McLean, like as we saw him, most notably introduced. But I feel like it was, kind of an array of different guys throughout the year. Marion Cooper, he was he was like the lead cornerback when Travis Hunter was hurt, and then he was even finding issues like getting onto the field. So I'm just excited to see hopefully a more consistent defensive approach as far as, I don't know, what we want and having things like figured out, but then being able to adjust and go after those weak points.
Yeah, I think touching on one of what two of y'all said, kind of combining them into one, it seemed like there were a lack of adjustments, and we would just throw a new guy in there instead. Yeah. And there was just lack of consistency. And when you have so many new people on the field, usually multiple, at times it was multiple times a game, you see people get benched. There's not, the communication isn't there, and the belief from a defensive coordinator, not that Charles Kelly was terrible or anything, it was just that when you get benched, that's demoralizing for any player. So I something I've known about Cincinnati secondaries with Livingston is they're always really, they communicate really well. That's, what I think something that needs to be addressed. And they are super disciplined. They really don't try to play too above their role, and they just, rely on their teammates and play as a team. And I think another cool thing about Livingston that I've noticed is that he's from William and Mary, which I don't know how much you make of it, but 4 current NFL coaches all played football at William and Mary, and he did too. I think it's Mike Tomlin, Dan Quinn, Sean McDermott, and Brian Dable. So, it's like he has some good company in terms of just his coaching, prowess. I think I forget what he majored in, kinesiology. So, like, this is a guy that
injury issues.
Yeah. I think he could really be just like that type of guy that really works on things with particular players, because it's hard to really guess at this point what our starters are going to be. And you would imagine Travis is there. But besides that, we had so much inconsistency of just who was on the field at one time that with Livingston now coming in, I'm hoping he can bring that sort of level of faith. Because, no disrespect, but if he can believe in Eli Apple, he can believe in anybody. So I remember watching a lot of Bengals games when they were in the playoffs and stuff, and their secondary always played really physical, really tough. And I think if Livingston can bring that kind of same environment to the Buffs, then I think it should translate to a lot of wins and a lot of messing with quarterbacks the I think a difference between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 coming up this year is there's a large gap in terms of like quarterback talent. Because last year we had to face Caleb Williams and like
There were some teams that we played
Bo
had
Nix.
like 3 different quarterbacks in the same game.
Yeah, that's true.
So it was like the top was very high, but then the bottom, like I don't remember. Was it I think it was Stanford where they had the one quarterback that they would use to throw the deep shots, and they'd get that one guy and that would run the ball.
Yeah,
like the read options.
Oh, I think they did that at Oregon State too.
Was that Oregon State with
Aiden Childs?
Yeah,
he played a little in the beginning to run.
Yeah, but like with teams like that, I feel like if we're coming up against a team that isn't confident with one quarterback, that's a game that the Buffs should dominate. With the amount of secondary talent that is on the roster, if they're flip-flopping between different quarterbacks because they don't know which one's going to be best, the secondary should be feasting on that. They should be jumping everything, locking guys up, because if the other team's not confident in their call sheet, then I have no reason to believe. I don't see any reason to believe why the Buffs secondary shouldn't be confident in their own call sheet versus a situation like that. But like you said, like quarterbacks like Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, like that's just like those are the best quarterbacks in college. You're gonna give up plays to them.
Yeah.
But there's games that the defense should have dominated that they just didn't this year.
Right.
And I hope that a more cool-headed pro-style coach can keep the team together and, like you said, work with each other and play as a team and dominate these games that they should be dominating.
Yeah, and I think another thing is you saw some very gradual improvements with the defense that came on as the season went along. They would start to force more turnovers at times. The offense just wasn't able to capitalize. So with all the improvements to the offense, on the other end, with those defense that kind of kept us in games, I think they really improved in the red zone as the year went on. And I think I had more sacks than I really thought. And I think there were a lot of different guys that made contributions. And with all the new D linemen that are able to, help out, get to the passer more, I think with the secondary more buttoned up, it can cause a lot more coverage sacks. So even if the talent isn't going to always be there in the front seven, the secondary can cover up a lot of the weaknesses that I still think we have in stuff like the linebacker core, maybe the interior D-line, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Another thing that I've been kind of thinking about is we've talked a lot about, what it'll look like on the field. But obviously recruiting has been, the whole thing with Colorado since Coach Prime's hiring. How big, this could be for the both of you, but how big do you think, this hiring will be, getting an NFL guy, and how do you think this, hiring affects what has been a pretty successful recruiting period so far?
Well, I think being in the league for over a decade, Livingston is not he's got a resume that he can show to high schoolers or transfers. If you want to play in the pros, I know what star DBs look like in the pros. He knows what turned Jesse Bates into Jesse Bates, Von Bell into Von Bell. Awuzie did really good for a while in Cincinnati before he had some injuries. And even now with guys like Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner and Jordan Battle, he's turned guys into really good, really solid NFL DBs. So people talk about the problems with the Buffs defense with the linebackers or the defensive line, but having a solid secondary can mend those issues to an extent. And so if he can recruit if he can be a part of the process to recruit a lot of top high schoolers and top transfers, I really do think that's something that he can, what's the word I'm looking for, contribute to. He can be a big part of our recruiting for the defense because he's got a good resume. He's built a lot of good guys, and he's been in the league for a long time. And like you said, William and Mary.
Yeah.
Good.
Football factory.
Yep.
And I think another part of it is his age. He's a younger guy compared to Kelly especially. I mean, he's only I couldn't verify his age, but I think he's either 35 or 36. So he's, in his mid-30s, a guy that was a coach literally right after he stopped playing football. So, this is someone that everyone, he wanted to do, maybe he wanted to do this because he was a really good player in college. Wasn't FCS or, wasn't super big, but ended up being like, having that football mind is, I think, the most important. And you see some of those guys. It's a bit of an obscure hire. I don't know how many times an NFL guy will get their first ever coordinator job in college. I don't see a ton of that. But with the guys he's developed, like I was going to mention Taylor Britt earlier, he had the 9th best passer rating allowed of any corner in the league, even with how the defense struggled last year. And Jordan Battle, another guy that was really starting to come along as the season was ending for Cincy. I think he has that kind of charisma that can really connect to a college athlete, even though he hasn't been in the college game in so long.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people say he looks more like an offensive coordinator than a defensive coordinator that's going to be like getting up in your face and yelling and, super intense. But he's going to provide so much insight to so many different guys that really need it, like a Cormani McLean, like a Marion Cooper, even like a Travis Hunter, who after that injury we really saw, maybe his production fall off as a DB. I think he provides something to the college game where he's always felt like he's had an interest in it, from what I've seen him talk about. Even though he's been in it, but he has that NFL experience where he can develop someone into like a Shiloh Sanders, like a Preston Hodge who we just got from Liberty, like a Cameron Silman Craig, into that kind of NFL guy that we don't really see as of right now.
Yeah. I like both the points that you guys brought up because I feel like they mix together well. Because with him being as young as he is, I feel like that's a really huge thing, especially with how quickly sports are changing with NIL and the likeness and all those things. I feel like it really pays to have a guy who is around the same. I mean, not that mid-30s is too close to a college athlete, but have a guy like someone within the same realm who understands everything that's going on. Not that older coaches wouldn't, but
he's not like old enough to be their dad.
Yeah, like I'm assuming he has a better grasp of social media, how that all works, and so not only will that help in recruiting, but just like relating to all these guys. And through last year, it really seemed like a big thing was building that chemistry. But of course, with a younger guy, you're like, all right, well, how much control are they going to have? How much respect will they garner in the locker room? And I really think that you talked about it a little bit, but it comes back more to your point about him being an NFL guy and being at that age, he can, and being like, oh yeah, I've been in the NFL for a decade. I think just that alone will gain the respect of a locker room. So yeah, I like both those answers, and I think those two things will come together well and really create a good chemistry in that locker room and set up for a good defense. I'm just really excited to hear, him talk in person and get an opportunity to ask him some questions and, really see if those things come to fruition.
Well, yeah. The football team's Twitter, I think, just released a little message from him like 5 minutes ago.
Really?
That's very cool.
Breaking news on this.
I don't know how much we'll get out of it. We'll probably just say the generic things that coaches do, but yeah, I think one concern I want to bring up before I maybe move on is just about the run game. I think he could provide a lot of versatility for some of our DBs, like we saw Trevor Woods play linebacker last year. We could maybe see a little more of that because something that the Bengals did really well was play players basically out of position. They would play guys like Sam Hubbard, who's a D-end, at linebacker sometimes, and bring, like kind of force players to be out of their element so they get better at it. And I think that could be something we could to watch out for at least next year.
Yeah, it's like what I talked about earlier about if you can lock up the passing game, then could make things easier otherwise. But like the Utah game that we were at, where they had 38 carries between two running backs.
Yeah.
And then they had another guy with 7, and the quarterback had 5 carries. He had 6 completions.
Yeah, I did some quick math on next year's schedule. All of our opponents for next year average 100, or at last year they averaged 176 rushing yards a game.
Yeah.
And we gave up, I think it was basically the same. Yeah, no, the exact same. We gave up 176.4 yards, and I did all the math. Like, it took me way too long to do it, but our opponents averaged the exact same number. That's so wild.
That's crazy. I mean, so
I'm just hoping those additions in the D line really make those early impacts.
Because I remember we were up in the press box with like 8 minutes left, and CU just scored, and we went down to the field to get ready for the press conference. By the time we got down, it was like 2 minutes left, and they still had the ball. They only moved like 25 yards.
Yeah, we didn't touch the ball again.
Yeah, they just ran the clock the whole time. That was one of the most frustrating games I've ever watched because they threw the ball 10 times, and
but even when they were throwing it, they were succeeding.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It kind of just last year defense. There were some of those games where the opposing team was just doing whatever they wanted, and it's something to look out for. Like if they run to set up the pass, maybe. I think that could be something where we could improve at actually, because maybe being more ready in those passing situations or in those play action plays, not getting caught too out of position, because we gave up so many big plays. It felt like through the air and through the ground too. But I think once you take away a lot of what a quarterback wants to do, their offense becomes so much more predictable. And when you have that, the linebackers I'm still not sure about, but on the D line it's so much better personnel wise. BJ Green, huge ad. Samuel Okunlola, who is Nwankwo from Houston. I think I like Davis Swain to maybe make some plays, even though he's a freshman out of high school. I'm excited to see what the D line can do, especially when they're kind of have that new figurehead in Livingston, even though he's not really a guy that's been specializes in D line or linebackers.
Yeah, I just being the DB coach. And the NFL, hopefully, some of that can translate to helping the linebackers in coverage, like covering the tight ends a lot versus CSU. I think his name was Holker.
Yeah, no, Holker's good.
Dominated that game. He was, even if he wasn't open, he was still making the play.
I think he was like an All-American honorable mention at tight end.
Really?
He was really good.
He just destroyed.
Like it wasn't just us. It was bad when he played us because it felt like everybody was killing us. It was, what was his name? They have a bunch of good receivers. Horton.
Yeah.
Horton was good.
Was nice.
Even Stanford, Iron Manor.
Oh my God,
that dude,
6,000 yards in one game.
Yeah, that's not happening with Livingston.
I hope not.
I feel like
I hope not,
because that was one thing I wanted to bring up is this kind of goes back to like the consistency and like the adjustments point, but it was really weird how it seemed like the defense would either get stops or just none at all. Like it was either at the top or the bottom, and it was really just, I don't know, kind of astonishing how a defense could be so locked down for a whole entire half and like, I don't know, then the next just give up so many points and, I don't know, look like a completely different unit out there. So I don't know, that's one thing that I want to be fixed, and I think should be. I don't think a guy of Livingston's talent will allow that to happen, but I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, I was confused about whether we're moving on.
I was waiting.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure either, but
the transition. But I don't know. That's about all I have to say for now about Livingston. But I guess stay tuned about that the article that'll eventually be coming out.
Yeah, I think I'll edit that part.
No, that was kind of funny. Patrick, shout out to him for having a lot of stats prepared for from the Bengals defense and stuff like that. So I think that's about all I have to say. I mean, it's just we'll wait and see. That's the biggest thing.
Can't wait for spring game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the hardest thing about this, though, is, like, why we were left silent right there is just, like, I don't know. You can only say so much because it's all just speculation at the moment.
That's true.
We don't know what kind of defense will play. Maybe something I forgot to mention earlier is something the Bengals do a lot is they drop 8. But, that's...
We did that a lot last year.
Yeah. And with the better D linemen, maybe you still see it. But I think... we can't expect it to be an exact replica of Bengals defense because he's not the one calling the plays.
Yeah.
He's just the one coaching up the DBs, telling them what positions to be in, how to play leverage, and things like that. So I'm really interested to see how he is as a play caller, how much of the Anarumo system he's going to take with him. Because if he takes a lot of it with him, there are a lot of really good traits that I've already talked about that I'm really excited that we could potentially see in the defense. And I think, when I mentioned having not great linebackers, that was something that the Bengals were able to get. They were able to get the best out of, not really known linebackers like Jermaine Pratt and but yeah, more recently with Anarumo, Pratt and what was it, Logan Wilson?
I saw a guy with a Logan Wilson jersey in the lobby of my dorm.
Hey, I mean, without Anarumo's system and how good that defense has been, I don't know if Logan Wilson would have any jerseys made for people. So, I think trying to get the best out of linebackers, working with the defensive staff, because Vincent Dancy taking over for Nick Williams, still a pretty big loss now that we've seen all the new D linemen come in. But yeah, Coach Hart with the linebackers hopefully will work in close contact with Livingston, all those position coaches.
We've seen Sapp this season.
I think he
or is
said
that next year?
I think so. I think he mentioned he was going to be in March. He's going to get hired in March officially. It was something about him getting a college degree, or I don't know.
Doesn't he have to be isn't he going to be like a graduate assistant or something?
I don't know what exact coach he'll be, because I was thinking he may be D tackles, if that's a thing. I don't know.
Well, you can only have 10 coaches, so
true.
The position specific, I'd imagine they'd
I think we still don't have an official D-line coach. I think it's going to be Sal Sunseri, who I think it was last year, or I think he at least has worked with Coach Prime at Jackson State, but yeah, it would be cool to see Warren Sapp there too, because that's another NFL voice.
I thought we were
in the building.
Ed Reed.
Oh yeah,
saw all the rumors on Twitter.
I saw Bill Belichick. I saw everything for our D coordinator. It was a wild time, a wild wait on this hire, and then it ended up being someone no one even knew.
I never even heard of Robert Livingston.
I mean, in fairness, if we were filming this podcast last year before we had even hired a coach, and we were like, oh my God, I saw Deion Sanders on the timeline, bro. I saw Deion Sanders on the timeline.
Yeah,
anything could happen, low key. Not saying that some of those weren't ridiculous, but I don't know. Anyways, to avoid more silence, we should move on to women's basketball.
Cool with me.
So yeah, I don't know. We can start either with that big Oregon win.
We'll start with the win. Start with the good.
Yeah. Okay.
Because now I think now that they lost, the pressure's on. I don't know how much you want to add on this, Patrick, but I just was really impressed by the Oregon game and another split with the Oregon schools, this time at home. They just absolutely smoked the Ducks. I mean, they scored 90, which they haven't done since the start of conference play. Oregon hasn't been very good. They've been just completely reeling. It was their 6th consecutive loss. And we just did whatever we wanted. In the beginning, they were playing a bunch of zone, and it got so bad at the end of the game they had to go into a box and one, which I don't know if I've ever seen in a college game before. But we had 32 assists, which was a season high. It got a little bit close to it was the most since 1994, and it got kind of close to the program high, which was 38, I think. And 19 of them in the first half, which is a record. I think it was just a real team effort, but Maddie Nolan was the story, at least in scoring, because she went nuts at the end of the first half. She had 3 threes in a row. As a team, we shot 9 for 14 from 3 in the second and third quarters. Maddie and Frida combined for 5 threes in a row between the end of the first and the start of the second. So it basically just flipped. We were up by 9 at that point, and then we ended up being up by 22, and basically just about 2 minutes of game time. Last minute and then the first minute of the second half. It was a really good win. I'm impressed that they can still show flex those offensive muscles, considering the stretch they were on before. But then it kind of bit them in the butt the next game. Like, we only lost by 6 to Oregon State, but we were down by 20.
20, like at half, I think.
Yeah, at half, and then even with like 5 minutes left, we were down 20. Like, it was pretty bad, and it was a lot to do with the offense just really breaking down. They only gave up. We only shot 10 threes the whole game, and Frida and Maddie, after going off just 2 days prior, had 3 attempts from 3 combined, which was I would imagine the lowest they've had all year. We went on a nice little run at the end with like the bench warmers in, like Charlotte Whitaker, Brianna McLeod made some impacts. Michaela Johnson, I even have seen do well with the minutes she gets. But now that we have lost, the pressure is really on for tomorrow on the road against Utah. I think there was some stat Brian, my goat Brian Howell brought up is the fact that we are 1-54 in our last 55 road games against top 25 teams.
That is crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah. Dang.
That's brutal.
Now, this is a much different year than a lot of the years in the past, the last 20 years or so. We haven't defeated a top 25 conference opponent on the road in 20 years, which is 58 straight net losses.
Talking about the women's team, right?
Yes.
Not
yes.
Tad Boyle's.
No. I know the road woes are usually associated with the men's, but the women, I mean, they went through a long stretch where they just weren't a very good team in general, and they've had to build themselves up. But now that they are at this point, we have a chance. I mean, the only road game we've played against a ranked team this year so far has been against Oregon State, the first game, and that was a pretty close game, more competitive than this last time. But now we have 3 in a row against Utah, UCLA, USC. So I think even if we just win one of these next 3, we'll take it. That loss to Oregon State really just like ramps up the pressure and puts a big bummer into this latter stretch of the season, because if they won, we could be talking about them as the number 2 team in the country right now, because if Iowa lost and who was it? NC State also lost. But now they're number 8, coming off a loss, and they're staring a 4-game losing streak in the face with at least how their history has played out with them in the past. Their only one win against a top 25 team on the road was technically, I wouldn't call it a complete road game, because it was the round of 32 against Duke last year. Mm-hmm. It was in Cameron Indoor, but it wasn't, still a tournament game, still a decent road presence of fans. But yeah, and this is the second stretch of the season with 4 games in a row against top 25 teams.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is just at least getting tomorrow against Utah, and then you go from there, because you beat USC already at home, really tight game, but you already lost to UCLA at home.
I'm really not looking forward to that game.
They have the big upper hand.
The way that they played the first time, it was close, but the way they got out-rebounded was just, it was like almost comical how crazy the rebounding difference was. Like, we had like -6 defensive rebounds the whole game. Every single shot they missed, they got it back, and they would kick it out, put another shot up. If it missed, got it back. It was brutal, and that was at home. They had the crowd going for them and everything, and that was at home. And now they're going on the road where they already struggle versus ranked teams. They're going to be playing against the crowd too. That game could, in my opinion, get kind of rough.
Yeah, I mean, UCLA has kind of slipped in recent games. They haven't been as completely dominant as they were, because they were the number 2 team right before they played us, coming off a loss. But they have, lost some conference games against teams we've blown out the water. Like they lost to Washington, and who else was it? They've had some rough games because now they're
number 9.
Number 9, which is right below us, which is surprising considering they beat us. But it was Washington State, not Washington. It was Washington that beat USC, who we will be playing right after that. Washington State, we did manage to beat also, and they have won 2 in a row. They play Oregon State a couple games before us, and Utah, so they have some losable games up until then. And I think with this schedule and just how it's played out, this was unfortunately a really bad year to have a really good year because of how tough the schedule is. We still, we could still be a top 15 team at the end of all this, but only because we've had these really tough stretches of the year, four games in a row against top 25 teams, which you would hope it would be more spaced out, but that's just how it's been. Yeah. And I think the rebounding will be better against UCLA if Sarah Rose Smith plays, because she didn't last time, and she's, I think, for a little bit of Pac-12 play up until she got hurt, she averaged 9 rebounds a game. So, yeah, I think we have that advantage back for us. I don't think we're gonna get out rebounded like that again. Even with the loss, I saw Erin Vonleh make strides rebounding wise against Oregon State. So I think it's just gonna be really tough because Jalen Sherrod hasn't played as well lately. She either doesn't really score much or has been kind of inefficient.
How many threes do you think she's taken this season, just off the top of your head?
More than she used to. I mean,
she's taken 52. How many do you think she's made?
10?
11.
Yeah,
okay.
I was thinking about 10, but I didn't want to be disrespectful.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, she was never a shooter. I mean,
yeah.
But she's now just at least trying. She's putting him up way more than she would before, because we needed that shooting when Maddie Nolan had some rough games leading up to, I think it was Washington. She had 11 in the first half, and then Oregon, she went crazy. So it's been a bit of an inconsistent thing with Maddie, and then even with Frida, she has her off nights.
Yeah.
So we've kind of needed that shooting, and I'm kind of looking on Quay Miller to kind of step up her shot selection from 3, and maybe her aggression in general, because we've needed her on offense, but the inconsistency again has really limited limited her getting to the all Pac-12 play that we saw from her last year.
Going off the 3-point shooting, though, this kind of leads into a good point that I had seen. It's more a statistical thing, but in both losses to Oregon State held Colorado to only 10 and 11 3-point attempts in both those games. Held them to only 3-point makes in both. And so I thought that was really interesting, especially because the third least amount of threes that they've put up in a game this year has been against Utah. And granted, that came in a win, but that came at home. And so I think I think that would be something to look for, especially with, the 3-point, inconsistency that you've kind of brought up that the Buffs have needed. But also how, it's at least shown, at least through Oregon State, how not being able to, utilize the 3-ball can really come back to bite them. And so, I don't know. I think that would be a really huge thing to look for on the road against Utah. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything?
I guess on the Oregon State side, I think what they did really well was utilize the 3-ball. They went 7 for 8 in the second quarter from 3.
Yeah, that's insane.
We've seen
that was
crazy
when they really
hot streaks this year from them, and so I think just let it fly. Yeah,
and I think the issue and where I start to get a little concerned is when they asked JR after the game about how Maddie and Frida had only 3 attempts combined, and all she said was, at least of substance, was that they played the shooters really tight.
Yeah.
So any team can do that. They have 1 or 2 pretty good perimeter defenders that takes out a huge element of the offense that has helped us, beat teams like LSU and be a top 3 team in the country. Has been our outside shooting has started to improve, but if you have a team that can just play the shooters tight, that takes out a whole layer of our offense and forces us to play within the mid-range. And Oregon was kind of an outlier because it didn't seem like we missed the entire game from mid-range, and they took a lot. So I think it just comes down to ball movement, getting that off-ball movement, also setting up more plays for Frida to get a shot. Because if the shot's there, she's going to make it almost half the time.
It is interesting seeing just that Oregon State matchup, though. Just because of how dominant Reagan Beers is. Because, I don't know. We think about our offense, averaging 18.2 points per game, 11 rebounds for that double-double. But defensively, she's leading Oregon State in blocks with 1.3 a game, leading them in steals with 1.2 points a game. And she's leading the defensive win shares, defensive box plus minus. And so I think for a team like Oregon State to be able to have a player like Reagan Beers allows them to really close out on the shooters with a lot less risk of blow-bys and allowing the dominance of Quay Miller and Aaron Vonleh in the paint that other teams can't necessarily match up with. So I think, I don't know, it'll be interesting if Colorado comes across this Oregon State team again, just because of how well that matchup seems to go in Oregon State's favor.
I'd be really concerned.
but I don't know. We've talked a lot about what the rest of the season will look like, some of the things that have gone wrong, what it led to the Oregon State loss. But looking ahead to Friday against Utah, what do you guys think are some of the biggest things that they need to do in order to pull out a win?
I think so. What we did last time that helped us win was Jalen Segrod scoring 34 points, and I think Sarah Smith also had a double-double her what was her first career double-double? Was best game of the year with us, and Alyssa Peely had her best game of the year. Or not that I'm mixing my words up. She got hers. She had 27. She is really, really good. But I think it's just going to be coming down to if we can hold their secondary options down, because I'll have to find the box score, but I don't think anyone else was in double digits besides her. Yeah. We really pulled ahead in the fourth quarter because they had us for a little bit in the third. It was really even the whole way, and then I think we were down 8 at one point early in the fourth, and then we just outscored them 25-11. So you can maybe think of that as some with altitude, but Salt Lake City, not a ton of difference between the altitude. So maybe it was just we figured something out.
Yeah, one thing that happened was foul trouble. At the end of the game, no one fouled out for Utah. But 4 of the 5 starters with 3 or more fouls.
Yeah,
definitely played a role. I remember Peely went down with an injury and had to leave the game briefly, I think in that fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. But it was interesting to see how great Peely played in the first half, and then how Colorado was able to maintain her in the second half and ultimately get that W. And so really, I think I've brought the 3-pointers. You've brought up different defensive strategies, but I really think the biggest thing would just be if kind of just going back to what we originally talked about, was just how they perform on the road. Because I just remember that was the first game of the year that I had gone to, and that crowd ultimately seemed to be like the difference maker, because every single play, every single thing that went in favor of Colorado, the crowd was on their feet, they were rocking, and I think that really played a big factor in Jalen's career day, just because I don't know, she was feeling herself, she was riding that momentum, and I just remember there was one specific and one where you're like, yeah, like this is her game, and
she needs one of those games right now.
I was gonna say it's been 4 of her last 5 games under 10 points, and she had 2 after that Utah game under 10 points as well before this stretch. So I think it's about time for her to get another big one in there.
And I think another thing that I'm noticing about just last time we played Utah, Frida was only 1 for 9 from the field, and then Quay didn't score at all. She only played 11 minutes. She didn't even take a shot because of foul trouble. And I think what they found is that when they played Sarah next to Aronette in the front court, they were a lot more athletic. They could guard Peely with just a lot more athleticism. And even though she got her, she made 10 of her 18 shots. She only went 1 for 6 from 3, and they forced 6 turnovers on her. Mm-hmm. So, having all that defensive attention on her, she's still going to score just because of the talent she is. But if, she fails to get the other players involved, like what happened against the last time they played, they only shot 5 for 20 from 3, even though we only shot 3 for 12. So I think if we ramp up the threes, you saw a lot of minutes from Kendall Wetta in that game as well, probably locking down on defense, had 4 steals. Sarah Rose Smith also had 4 steals. And I kind of forgot, when Jalen scored 34, she also had 6 steals. So we had 16 total is super impressive, and we only had, I believe, I don't remember how many steals we had against Oregon State, but if we can really get back to the running in transition, getting players like Quay and Maddie, who only had 1 shot, and Frida, she's not going to go 1 for 9 and 1 for 5 from 3 all the time. She's going to have her games where she scores 20 plus. So, I like our chances, just because I think Utah, as good as they've been, and as good as they've been at home, they were held to 44 points by Oregon State just last week at home. I think that was, and they've lost 2. They haven't been unbeatable at home or anything, like the Utah men, I guess you could say. But
true.
But it's going to come down to how limited the secondary options for Utah can be. Because we can let Peely score as much as she wants. But, that's only so many points. And if we can hold down the rest of their starters, defend the 3-point line a bit better, I think the last few games we've given up a lot of pretty clean looks from 3. I think, and then maybe a little bit of a change in rotation, because the bench, I think, had a plus, we're plus in the plus minus, and the starters were negative 20. So I think maybe incorporating some of those secondary options more, kind of staggering the minutes with Aronette and Quay, and Sarah. I think she'll probably get a lot of run this time around. I think we have a very good chance to win.
Yeah, and I like that Sarah matchup on Peely, just because Peely is an interesting player with her frame and her athleticism, just because she's bigger than a lot of guards but quicker than a lot of forwards.
Yeah.
And so I think, having Sarah Rose Smith, who, kind of fits into that mold, I don't know, I feel kind of the best of this Colorado roster will be huge, and I think, that's why Peely didn't have as big of a second half the first time around. So yeah, I don't know. Do we have anything more for the women's team, or?
Not really. I think just emphasizing defending the 3-point line. Oregon State was making a lot of shots, but I think a lot of it was just them getting those looks and just moving the ball around. We kind of collapsed on a lot of, they would drive and kick a lot, and we struggled against that. So, and we kind of struggled to get around screens, some off-ball screens also. So I think getting the communication back with the defense, because it has been a bit of a down year, at least compared to last year. I would say our defense last year was probably a little bit better than it is now, even though we're a better team overall. So yeah, that's really all I have to say.
Yeah. So I don't know. We can move into men's basketball. I didn't mean to go. I don't know. Don't mean to go back, but yeah, more 3-point stats. Utah is 2-6 when shooting 30% from 3 or less. When they shoot above that, they've only lost 1 game.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That should be a big aspect of as we continue to mention. But I don't know. We can go into men's basketball now, and I don't know. A lot of question marks surrounding this team.
To say the least.
Yeah. This time around, every week it seems we talk differently about whether they're part of the first 4 in or the first 4 out. It seems to change. And, unfortunately this week for them, sitting in that first 4 out category after, beating Arizona State at home, which was a good win, but, ultimately just not having enough against Arizona despite a decent start. So I don't know. I know I've been the one that's covered them for Skill Buffs most of the year, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Yeah, what do you guys think about this final stretch? Going to see UCLA, who's hasn't been too great this year, but amidst a 4-game winning streak, and I don't know, just finishing up against the rest of the Pac-12.
It's just the Tad's not rolling on the road. It's just that's my biggest thing is any road game. I don't really whoever we're playing doesn't really factor in too much to me because it's the road. It's like, I mean, we've seen all year. What are they going to do on the road? Are they going to make it competitive and maybe sneak away with a win, or are they going to get blown out? It's been really bad on the road the whole year, and I know it's everybody says it. That's like the laziest take ever, but that's just you look 2 games in a row on the road, UCLA and USC, and then a pretty big home stretch though. So we've got 3 in a row on home after this California trip. If they can go lose 2 on the road and then win 3 at home, that's not the worst in the world, but that really relies on them winning 3 in a row at home, which is never something you never want to bet on yourself to have. You never want your whole season to fall down on, can I win 3 games in a row? You just getting 1 on the road, I think, would be a major success if they could just sneak 1 out.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people have brought up injuries and, getting the team fully healthy. But it really, you're going to have injuries every year. I feel like, it has been to key players like Cody, like Tristan for a little, and Hadley. But when you have 3 guys that are projected by some sites to be top, first picks or first round picks, and this year's NBA draft, and you have those kind of guys that can fill in, like Javon Hadley and Luke O'Brien. You have those role guys, and you have the core 3 of Cody, Tristan, and KJ. It really shouldn't be this hard. I don't. I get the road thing, but with Arizona at home and just recently with the defense, it's just been really bad. And Arizona, you lose to them, whatever, but you give up 99 points
after giving up 97.
Right.
First time around.
In regulation both times. It's not even like these are long outlast them games, shootouts. You're losing by 20 plus both times, and you lose by damn near 50. You can accept those losses, but just the way that they're losing, they just look like on such a tier below the Arizona and just kind of the upper echelon of the Pac-12 that it really just doesn't move you into putting them in the tournament at this point. And, if you can win both of these games, so UCLA and USC both kind of on down years, UCLA playing better lately, though against some of the lesser teams in the Pac-12. You think of it as you have a chance because you end up, you get those 2 road wins. Maybe, if you win at least one of them convincingly, then maybe people start to see, okay, they're turning a corner. Maybe it was the health that was the issue. Now that they're healthy, and, Cody can start playing well, the defense starts to improve. You have more people thinking that they could be up there. in the running for the tourney. But at this point, you really are just completely out of room for error. I think the hardest game you have left is Oregon on the road, though have they been struggling lately? I don't know.
I mean, the Pac-12 this year has just been.
Yeah, they've lost 3 of 6.
Outside of Arizona, the Pac-12 has just been a shuffle, bro. Like,
since they lost to us, though, they've lost 4 of 7. So
yeah. So I don't know, but I don't know. It's just been really tough this year because, it's hard to say that, you don't want to blame the injuries because, like you said, every team deals with them. But yeah, now, you have two of your starters playing through facial fractures, playing with masks. You have Luke O'Brien, who, I talked to 2 days ago, saying that, he's not even sure if he's 80% yet with his ankle, so he's coming off the bench on a bum ankle. And then you look at just the rest of it. I mean, looking at Reffin and RJ Smith and whatever they've dealt with, this year as far as, missing the season, then coming back and that weirdness. But, then just like really the fluctuation of, Cody's been the biggest of the starters to miss games. I mean, Julian's missed games. Luke's now dealing with injuries. Hadley's missed a game. Tristan missed games with his ankle. And so I don't know. It's just really just a hard team to really kind of gauge just at this point in the season, other than, like, I don't know, just say, to me, I feel like this is just like a huge missed opportunity, just because I don't think Colorado really has the depth to play a full 40 minutes worth of basketball night in and night out. And I think just because, we've talked about this in past podcasts, but, after Julian Hammond and Luke off the bench, it's kind of a question mark. You don't know who Tad is going to go with. You don't know if it's Sanjay Zobe. You don't know if it's Bengat Dak. And even if it is, they're probably going to get only, at most like 10 minutes each. And so that's a hard thing. Eddie has also, and then, this is one thing I want to talk about, but only having one true center on the roster has been real killer for Colorado this year. Because when Eddie gets in foul trouble, Colorado doesn't have too good of a backup option. They have to go that small ball lineup with Luke in the game at the power forward and TDS at the 5. And then if it's not foul trouble, you do have that small ball option when teams are playing a little faster and Eddie can't really keep up with that. But then on the flip side, you don't have that inside presence that has helped to elevate the offense so much this year. And it's just been really frustrating seeing this elevated offense with what Eddie can do on the offensive side of the floor, but this defense just not being able to play a consistent full 40 minutes. They'll have stretches where they'll get like 7 stops in a row, and then they'll go and give up 7 straight baskets, and I don't know. It's just been a huge discombobulation of a year, to be honest.
Yeah, and you meant we've talked about the one center rotation thing. Now that's been a problem for a while because like last year with Lawson Lovering, him being really the only true 5 that got considerable playing time. And we thought this would maybe be the year Joe Hurlburt was a redshirt last year, get some run, but it's been kind of that small ball, and I think that's really hurt their size, especially like in rebounding. Especially when Eddie doesn't have it going, because lately, he's been struggling, I would say, a decent bit. Would you say?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd say so because, defensively, defensively, Eddie was never going to wow you just because he doesn't have the vertical aspect that a lot of interior defenders have. Yeah. So that part kind of hurts. But he uses his body well, so he's able to, body guys up, keep it out of the paint, and rebound missed shots. But I feel like offensively, he's really hit or miss because when he gets going, he can get going, he can score. Like we saw in that Cal game, I think he had 15 first half points, if I'm not mistaken. But I feel like a lot of times he'll catch the ball and there's a lot of thought before he makes his move, and that allows the defense to shift. The offense becomes stagnant, and I think that's why we've seen so many high turnover games from Eddie as of late. So I don't know. I think the biggest thing will be I mean, it's hard to really say what the biggest thing will be for the rest of the year, but I guess, with how much we've talked about Eddie and how much of an impact he's had on this team, it really seems that, Eddie needs to, hit his stride. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, coming into this, a lot of question marks. Because Cody, he struggled against Arizona, only had, I think it was 4 points if I'm not mistaken, or he had 8. So I don't know, just a lot of up and down. So yeah, I think the biggest thing will just be winning the games that you're supposed to win. So USC, Oregon State, and in Cal, I'd say. Maybe Stanford, even though Stanford is more towards the middle of the pack, but that USC, Oregon State, and California, all in that bottom 4 range. UCLA at least has, been kind of on fire as of late. So yeah, but even still, you kind of have to play perfect to have a chance at the dance.
Which I find, given like you talked about how much like NBA talent.
There's so much talent, roster. Not just the NBA guys.
And like, even just college, the good college guys. There's so much talent, and we're at a point where about a month left of the season and basically have to, like you said, play perfect to get a chance.
Yeah.
It's been incredibly frustrating to follow this team all year. Like you said, it's hard to gauge. It's kind of like going to every game. You can make predictions and stuff, but like whatever happens. You don't really know which way it's going to be that night, because of how hit or miss the whole team has been all season.
Yeah. No, I feel like one thing with like the talent has been, just that like injury side. And that's just really thrown everything off, because I don't think it really allowed, with the injuries starting so early in the year, I don't think it really allowed Cody to necessarily find his rhythm within the offense, not as like an individual per se, because he's had some good performances, and the Buffs have played well when he's back, obviously, projected to be a lottery pick. But it is different when, you look at that starting lineup, and outside of Eddie, you have 3 guys who all played last year and all played well, and then you introduce a guy who may even be your best offensive player. And so I think, just that limited amount of time trying to implement him, and then just other injuries and whatnot. It's just been really hard trying to find a consistent option. So I don't know. I'm kind of at my point of a conclusion. I don't really know.
Yeah, we kind of, if we wanted to move on from basketball, I know that you were at the sport that just started up, Patrick. Lacrosse.
Lacrosse
is back.
Shout out Trent for writing an amazing preview article.
Yeah.
He did a great job recapping last year. The first game was interesting is kind of a non-word, but it was interesting and
it's Oliver's favorite word.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they started off really well. They were pretty much dominated Louisville. They played Louisville at home for the opener, and they led the first half 11-6. It was kind of not really close. Louisville scored 6, but the Buffs kind of controlled the game the whole first half. They were very disciplined. They didn't have a lot of penalties. But then the second half, they had 3 or 4 penalties in like the first 10 minutes, I think. It was pretty rough. And game was tied with a minute and a half. They needed a game winner with just like 30 seconds left to actually close it out. So Louisville was kind of a game that you would have wanted to play better than they did the whole game. If they would have played the way they played the first half, would have been like, that was exactly how we wanted this to go. But the fact that they gave it up but then held on, I think bodes well for like the resilience of the team overall. Shows that things get rough, they can stick in it, which is good because they're playing the number 1 ranked team in the country. I actually don't remember what day that is. It's soon.
Northwestern is a week from today, I think.
Yeah, that's the next home game, is versus the number 1 ranked team in the country, that's a big game. CU's ranked top 10 to start off the season, so they're a pretty highly touted team. So if they can compete with a team like Northwestern, that would be massive for the rest of the season. And so we saw good things, which is great. You want to open out the season strong, which is exactly what they did. So hopefully that trend continues throughout the rest of the sort of preseason quotes aspect.
Yeah, I remember last year they really struggled in non-conference play. We didn't really think there'd be much of anything, and they kind of figured it out as the season went on. And I read Trent's article preview also, and it was really good because it kind of pointed out who's coming back, who do we lose, and we lost. I think it was our top 2 scorers from last year. I remember writing about them a lot. They just would dominate every game, but we found some new talent. So who do you think really stood out to you individually in that first game?
Scoring wise, I don't know how to say her last name, so forgive me. Eve Hritzuk had 6 goals, which was great. I'm pretty sure this was her first game with the team. I think she's incoming transfer. And yeah, she was at Northwestern until this year. And she was pretty good there. Academic Big Ten, so she's a smart girl too. So got some big brains on the team. But 6 goals in her debut game was awesome. I mean, I didn't really know who she was before the game. I didn't really pay much attention to the roster, but then I just kept seeing her number over and over again. She had 6 goals and the 1 assist, and I mean that's basically a third of the points that the Buffs scored. So if she can take over for, like Trent pointed out in his article, we lost top 2 scorers. If she just fits right into that and takes over, that's perfect. I mean, that's just a quick solution. Don't have to think about it very much. Aside from her, Madeline Pisani, also 5 goals, 7 points. She had 2 assists. She was also awesome, and that's coming from 2 different positions too. It's Madeline's a midfielder, Eve's a attacker, so you've got production from multiple different spots on the field, which is always great to see. You're not focusing too much on just one group of players to make the plays for your team. So the team seems pretty well-rounded. Main thing for me is just discipline with the lead. Stay out of foul trouble. They had at least 6 minutes of penalties off the top of my head in the second half, which was not good. Because that just gives Louisville an easy chance to come back. So just discipline with the lead and just keep shooting it. I mean, they were really solid for the most part. And so Eve and Madeline can just carry the load without the top 2 from last season. That's perfect for the team. I mean, easy decisions. Don't have to go 3-4 games of the season not knowing who's your number 1 player. So I think it looks very good so far, but we've only seen 1 game, so don't want to get too ahead of myself.
That's true, and I think the Northwestern game will be a huge measuring stick on how far this team can really go. And like what I was going to ask what their ceiling is, but I think it's a little bit too early to tell. And with this kind of game coming up, I don't know if you've watched they're number 1, but what do you think that maybe that CU didn't do as well and gave up that lead at the end that they could do well or even better against a team like Northwestern to maybe pull off the upset?
I think it's just, like I said, the discipline to not get yourself on the penalty, to stay in your zone, not leave your space wide open. There was a few plays where it looked like Louisville had 4 or 5 shots on the same possession, and CU just couldn't get it out of their own zone. So I think also part of that comes down to not letting the moment get ahead of you. It was a season opener, but it was also the home opener. And so sometimes you see things play out a bit unexpectedly in games like that. So the next time they're at home, they're playing the number 1 team in the nation. So just staying grounded and not letting the moment be too big, and then making sure you're not making silly mistakes, not tackling people, not checking to the face, things like that, to stay out of the penalty and keep everybody on the field and just get the ball in the right zone, not where they're going to score on you, but where you're going to score on them. So just mainly just discipline and it's mainly just mentals. Because we saw from that game there is talent. They have really good players. So it's just keeping your head intact, pretty much.
Yeah. I think limiting mistakes in all sports is always a key to, not to
Always
beat
a good
yourself.
thing.
Not to beat yourself. I know.
Exactly.
But to beat the number one team, I mean, you can't beat yourself. So yeah. I do. If we wanted to, if that's all we had in lacrosse, I know the baseball schedule came out. So
Did it?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
We I thought we were gonna play Utah State, which I mentioned in the reader I wrote about it, but we do not. We play San Diego State in our only non-conference series. Starts on the 24th, so just about a week away.
Yeah, pretty soon.
The first home game will be against Northern Colorado on March 2nd and 3rd, and then they play Air Force, Mines, and Colorado State all at home throughout March. So yeah, and then a little bit in April for those games. I think we can make all of them, which is really
great.
really good.
That'd be cool.
None of them are during spring break.
That's
And
good.
as long as the weather isn't what it was like last year.
It was cold last year, right?
It was
Well,
rainy.
It was cold and rainy. They got rained out, and then there was like snow on the field for one of the games, and yeah, it was a little dumb, but we were able to make a decent amount of them at the end. And this time, hopefully, we can cover them the whole season because they're a fun team to watch. They're really fun. Obviously, we were there for the fall.
Yeah.
And they had some crazy games against Air Force.
We need to get
the last one.
Home run cam to make sure that
Oh yeah.
we catch everything.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to get some second camera angles, try to do like sideline reporting, try to really expand on our broadcast of it because it's a pretty easy sport to do with the press box and everything. And
it's also a good team.
Yeah.
They have a good
fun.
group of guys who like to
know them
interact
well.
with us and yeah, they have some good personalities and they're just a fun team to not only watch but be around and we want to I don't know, as a people bridging the gap between CU baseball and the people that aren't able to be there on game day. I kind of feel obligated like to be the ones that produce this content and show how awesome this team is. So yeah, no, big stuff coming up and very excited for that.
Spring soccer also.
It's
Schedule got announced for the spring season.
Are those games consequential at all, or
I don't think
are
so.
they just exhibition?
It's a bunch of friendlies. They play Air Force next week at the Air Force Academy, and then they're at Prentup for the first time in April 6th.
Cool.
So hopefully soccer can. They're losing Shira James, who is not a very replaceable player. She was
the whole team.
She was incredible. I mean, I think she led with goals by like 12.
Yeah, she led the whole Pac-12 in goals.
Yeah, she was insane. So to lose her is not great, but they've brought in, I think, 3 transfers. I don't think they have any new recruits this year. Any high school recruits off the top of my head?
I think they have maybe a couple, but I couldn't.
Maybe 1 or 2, but I know they brought in 3 transfers. So maybe get some Moneyball action.
Yeah.
How do we get 3 players who can produce what Shira did?
Right.
Although at the end of the year, the freshmen were playing well. Like in that last stretch that they needed to make the playoffs. I remember the freshmen we're playing decently and had kind of stepped up. So I don't know, maybe not Shira James level yet. I think that would be kind of hard to eclipse in the upcoming years. But
I think you'll still have a really good defensive team, even if you lose that, because Jordan Knight's really
awesome.
Really good keeper.
She was incredible.
Awesome keeper. You have defenders that are improving. Like it was
Ava Priest was. I think she was honorable mention for the freshman team.
I wasn't gonna mention her yet because I know you're here, but we're an hour and a half in. But no, the Leba twins. I forget which one is a defender, but she made all freshmen too.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was one of them.
Faith.
It's Hope or Faith. Hope or Faith.
Faith is a defender.
So yeah, Faith made all freshmen, Pac-12. She's up and coming too. So yeah, I think the team all around is gonna be missing some players. Amaya Gonzalez, I know, is another that I think graduated.
Yeah.
But they have they added some depth in the midfield, and I think you can find that production in other ways than just one striker. I think that's
Yeah.
a big challenge, but it's a challenge that is, teams face a lot of not having, the striker, like, that one person that's gonna carry the load. You have to, kind of come together as a team and find different ways to score. Because I think something they did really well was last year was set pieces, and like on corners, and you filming the game-winning corner, and I think the first game
that was versus NC State.
Yeah, that they had so many of those times though where they would it would be Amaya or someone else, and
Juliana Hayward was also really
Hayward.
in those situations.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's returning.
I think so as well.
Yeah, I think she's either a junior or sophomore, and she'd find Shira. So I think, Shira can maybe, I don't know if mentor is the right word, but, kind of keep, like, or at least instill some traits in the team that can still give them success in those kind of plays. You could still see a lot of production. And thankfully, I think they'll still be really good defensively next year. We still have a whole summer ahead of us.
Yeah, they kind of underperformed in the tournament, which
well,
even towards the end of the year,
team.
the problem was like it was almost the same problem as like the volleyball team, where they started off very like just hot, and then once they got to the second half of conference play, it was like
had to get out wins, draws, stuff like that.
They had like 5 games in a row where they didn't win before the last 3 or 4 games, so it was like they kind of, it was a bit underwhelming the way the last month and a half of the season played out, including the playoffs, which, A&M's a good team, but the peaks of CU, in my opinion, were capable of beating.
Yeah, we weren't able to really get too many chances in that game.
Yeah, and even the goal they gave up was just...
Oh, my God. Well, it was that. I'm not blaming them at all for it, because it was so fluky.
Yeah, that was wild.
I mean, you still had a chance to win that game if that never happens.
Yeah.
Because it's, it's 0-0 going to extra time. But, I think they really just struggled offensively to get those goals, and you had to see. I think there was, maybe it was the win that really got them in the tournament, the last game of the year against Utah.
Yeah,
Shira pulled out a crazy winner in the last minute.
Yeah.
So, that's a huge shoes to fill, but it's a really well coached team. It's a really well
they're very
put together.
They don't get a lot of cards. They're always in the right positions. There's some games where, like, I remember Colgate. I know that was non-conference,
I was at Colgate.
but they just, like, they didn't let the ball in the defensive zone, like, the whole game.
Yeah.
They only scored twice that game, but it was just, they had the pressure the entire game. There was games like that where they just kind of did whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the year, you just didn't see any of that. You just saw them, like, scraping and clawing to edge out a victory to try and get into the tournament. So it could have been better than it was, but most of the good players are coming back. Losing Shower, like we talked about, is big, but pretty much everybody else that was a big producer is coming back. So hopefully big things for them.
It is kind of crazy this year about how many of the sports teams have started out really strong, or at least with high expectations, just for that second half to kind of, fizzle out whatever they did or were expected to do.
Yeah, volleyball was brutal to follow after the first 10 games.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Looking at, the men's basketball team with the expectations they had, football, we talked about a lot on this podcast, obviously, as everyone else has, but
I'm just hoping the same fate doesn't happen with the women's with this road trip.
I know. I'm like, nervous.
Yeah, they're making me nervous that they're gonna suffer the same fate as damn near every D1 sport.
Even hockey.
Yeah, even
hockey. The Nationals, and they split all these series that they should have swept.
Make sure you tune into Alex and Jared's pod.
Daniel Snipe and Sam Peed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't know. For everyone, it's not about how you start; it's how you finish. And I think we had a pretty good finish to this podcast. Not too bad,
we went through a lot.
Got to all the sports. Had a good start too. So not bad at all. But as always, I'm Oliver Hayes.
I'm Harrison Simeon.
I'm Patrick Dawson.
Not as always, but
not as always.
For one episode and hopefully more, because we loved having Patrick on today.
For sure.
But yeah, as always, you heard it here first. Peace. Bro didn't even raise his hand.